Right. So, as Claudia beautifully introduced, I'm going to talk about a couple of projects I was involved in the previous years. But before I do it, I would like to introduce the context of my work. So, as we already know, there is an increasing mobility of human beings across the world. And whether through choice or forced displacement, this has created new pedagogical reality that bring the cultural and racial diversity of the world directly into classroom and educational settings in general. Teachers seek training on how to respond to these new realities, which call for new pedagogies. And this is where my work is coming from. It is in response to the need of learners and educators. So just to introduce, this framework has been published as part of the UNESCO 2025 report. And the four contexts of multilingual education we are talking here are the ethnic minority languages. So we are talking here about the situation where L1 is L1 or mother tongues of the learners are not the same as the languages of their environment, as the dominant language of teaching. We are also talking about multilingual education when languages that learners use are endangered languages, or we also talk about the situation where we introduce into our teaching migrant and refugee languages, but also about the situation where we are teaching additional languages in schools. I'm mentioning it because very often when you talk about multilingualism in schools, we are immediately thinking about languages of children who speak these languages at home, whilst in the project I'm involved in, we are talking about all these four contexts. So it's not, so we are seeing learners who learn additional languages as emergent multilingual speakers as well. And it is important to keep it in mind. So the situation in Scotland, as you can see on this slide, there are 198 languages spoken by children in Scottish schools at the moment. Of course, it's not just one school, it is the cumulative number that comes from all mainstream schools in Scotland. The main languages the children speak are English, followed by Polish, Urdu, Arabic, Scots, and the others you see on the screen. These languages are supported by the Learning in 2+ Languages policy that deals with children who speak other languages than the language of instruction at home. But they are also the concern of the 1+2 policy. And this policy provides guidance on teaching languages in Scottish schools. So this 1+2 policy talks about L1, L2, and L3. And just to explain, L1 in the context of this policy is the language of instruction. So it's English or Gaelic in Scotland. L2 is a language that is taught at schools from the age of roughly 5, where the children start school, until the age of 15 or 16, where they finish the second or the third class of the secondary school, which is the broad education stage after which children or young people in Scottish schools start specializing. What's interesting is L3. This is a very interesting space, because L2 is French, German, Spanish, Italian, Gaelic, Urdu, Mandarin, or Cantonese. So these are the languages that are taught as L2, because these languages can be then offered at the end of the secondary school, and young people can take exams in these languages. L3 can be any language. So it can be taught from the very beginning of the primary school, from the age of 5, and sometimes there are schools in Scotland that teach, for example, BSL from P1. But usually the children are entitled to this second additional language from P5. So it's about the age of 9 when they start learning it. And these languages can be any languages. They can be indigenous languages, migrant community, heritage languages, so languages spoken by the parents, grandparents, and ancestors. The idea behind it is that the school knows better what language its community needs to learn or wants to learn, and these languages can be taught for the 3 years in the primary school, or they can be taught by just for 1 semester. So it's the carousel model, when the children can learn one language, then a little bit of another language to get the experience of multiple languages. Again, it very much depends on the school. So now when I describe the context, I will talk a little bit about how my experience with languages and art started. So it started when I began working on my PhD at the University of Glasgow, and I engaged with the shift from monolingual to multi or translingual approaches. So my research became interdisciplinary. So I combined the fields of art, linguistic, and education in my work. And I used arts-based and art-informed participatory methods, inviting children and later, after my PhD, also teachers, to become my co-researchers. And as I mentioned, the idea behind my research was to support professional development of teachers in Scotland and beyond. So I situate my research within the framework of translanguaging, because it is a framework that is strong enough to deal with all the interdisciplinarity I'm bringing in my research. And whilst translanguaging is very often understood as using all linguistic resources the speaker has at their disposal to make meaning, I'm talking in it not just about linguistic resources, but also about all semiotic resources, arguing that if translanguaging means, as Liwei proposed, transcending the traditional divides between linguistic and non-linguistic cognitive and semiotic systems, then translanguaging art becomes an epitome of this process. And on the screen, you can see examples of what I call translanguaging art. So it is art that uses language and languages in different forms. I'm showing here a screenshot from Krzysztof Wodyczko's work Guest, which is the multi-channeled installation where speakers use multiple languages in their conversations. But I'm also talking about Monika Szydłowska's art book, where she uses the format of a comic to and multilingual conversations to engage with the topic of migration. I'm also including in the art, translanguaging art, work that uses written form of language, as you can see here in Małgorzata Dawidek's body text, in which she wrote on her body, and then she photographed herself. So in 2019 and 2020, I decided to bring these translanguaging artworks to the classroom and use them with children. So I run the in-school club and after-school club, in which I work with children aged 9 to 12, and we engaged with artworks, translanguaging artworks, to learn Polish. I mean, they learn Polish. I facilitated the process. The concept I used as our leading concept was the concept of gathering permission, introduced by Jorge Lucero in his PhD in 2011, and then developed further in his and colleagues' work in 2022 and later. And this concept means that his conceptualization of using artworks for learning is that you engaged with the artworks in a very specific way. You gather permissions from the artwork. So what I did was I introduced the work to the children. We weren't able to go to the museums or galleries or engaged with the artwork in its original, but I brought images of the artworks or videos to the classroom. I introduced the artist. We talked about artists' linguistic biography. We talked about artworks. So children were experiencing artworks. Then we discussed the artworks. Then they responded to the artworks through art making, and they reflected on the work they did. So there are four steps of the process that are inspired by gathering permissions process developed by Lucero. And here you can see some examples of the artworks learners engaged with. So, for example, I brought to the classroom the arts book by Monika Szydłowska, where she used Polish, English. There are some elements of French as well, as you can see here. And we talked about what she did with images and languages in her work. And then children started with the picture, one of the pictures from the book, and created their own comic. So you can see here that continuation of translanguaging from the first image. Sometimes children preferred to use one language, sometimes they wanted to do the comic in Polish only, sometimes they decided to use the other languages they know. So, and at the end, they recorded interviews. So one of them took a role of a journalist and the other was an artist, and then they swapped. So they themselves had an opportunity to reflect on their work in this conversation, in this artist's interview. And then this is another example based on, inspired by Monika, by Małgorzatas Dawidek work, in which she created an installation with a book, which pages were placed around the gallery on the walls. So children, we didn't have a possibility of using the wall of the classroom, and we used the chairs as an equivalent, but children work in pairs, writing their own translingual book. And then they placed these pages of the book and connected them with the string, the same way Małgorzata Dawidek did, which means that to read the stories they created, you had to follow the actual string around the room and read it out. Let me just go quickly back because I wanted to mention one more example. And this is the example of Marc Chagall's work. Marc Chagall very often depicts idioms in his work. And these idioms come from the languages he knew. So you can see idioms from French, from Yiddish, from Russian, for example, in this painting. What we did again, we talked about Chagall, we looked at examples of his work. We looked specifically at his Paris Through the Window, in which he combined multiple idioms. And then children had an opportunity to select idioms one from Polish, because this was the language they were learning, and one from the number of languages I knew they either learn or spoke at home or were interested in learning. So I provided them with a list of idioms in a number of languages. They selected one, and then they painted their own painting, not illustrating the idioms, but using idioms to express how they feel about the world, the immediate world around them, the same way Chagall did it in his Paris Through the Window. And this was really a very interesting exercise, which we don't have time to talk in details here, but I will definitely be happy to answer questions about it, because it showed how skillful children of the age of 9, 11 or 12 can be in using all the semiotic resources they have around them to communicate meaning, to talk about, to express feelings and opinions. And this brings me to the final slide from this project, which is the slide that discusses the final workshop, when I wanted to evaluate what we did in the series of 8 workshops and how much they learned and what were their opinions and reflections about it. And I asked them to interview each other, thinking again about the artist interview we did so many times before. But at this stage, children felt very confident about their work with me and that way of learning a language, that they decided to change the evaluation format. And instead of conducting a dry interview I invented, they decided to turn it into the TV show. So suddenly, instead of a journalist and an artist, I had celebrities and journalists in the room who talked about how they learned Polish. And you can see some excerpts from that conversation, and where children decided to change the format of the evaluation to truly show what they learned and also support each other in that evaluation. And you can see they decided to select the format that they knew very well, but at the same time, this format was supporting what they wanted to do, because there was a lot of repetition, and there is usually a lot of repetition in this kind of news round. So you can see they started with a bang. Hello, and today here we are on the news round, Polish news round. And then you have a child who has in their role of journalist say, give her a round applause, please. So she's warming up the public, she's warming up the interviewee. And then you have these conversations where they had a lot of fun. Okay, what did you learn in the first week? What Polish words did you learn in the first week? And then you can see that the responder is like we worked in partners. No, you say Polish words you learn. So there is this support, they are building the support. And then again, what did you learn in workshop 3? I learned comics, which means comics. She learned comics, and you can see how many repetitions already is happening here. She learned comics, which means comics. We are doing comics in Polish and other languages too. What did you learn in workshop 4? Well, we made a wheel of emotions, and I cannot really remember. She made a wheel of emotions, and she cannot really remember a thing. Oh no, she does not have amnesia or a memory loss. She's fine. Or she remembers now. And you can see how much fun they had when they were recording it, and at the same time they recorded it a number of times to make sure that they really speak about what they did, they pronounce the words correctly, they really show off how much they learned. So what I'm talking here is this translanguaging attitude that children were building throughout the project. Translanguaging attitude meaning using all the resources that are available, not necessarily the resources that were given to the children. So it was up to the person who makes meaning to decide, not to me, who was the facilitator of the learning. And by doing it, they showed that the series of workshops created this translanguaging space, the social space for the language users, which Li Wei describes as the space that brings together different dimensions of speakers' personal history, experience, and environment, the attitude, belief, and ideology, the cognitive and physical capacity into one coordinated and meaningful performance. And what's important here is also the fact that the translanguaging space differs from the learning space defined by Stevik. And Jones writes about it very eloquently, that whilst the latter, the learning space, is a space created by a teacher for the learners, the translanguaging space is a space created by learners themselves. It is not a space of freedom, but rather one of negotiation, in which the real-world constraints of linguistic, racial, gender, and economic domination are not swept under the rug. In other words, it is not the warm of comfortable space of a greenhouse where our students' creativity will naturally flourish and grow, but rather a space that is more like a marketplace, with all of its colors and contradiction, possibilities and dangers, a space in which creative practices and transcendent identities are born from moment by moment acts of negotiation, the messiness inherent in our social worlds. And indeed, when I ask children what they would like to do when they learn languages, one of the answers was, children like mess. We like mess. We like art making, but we like mess, and we like the messiness of what we are doing here. So, inclusion of the translanguagic art in a language classroom was important because it drew attention to the symbolic and performative nature of language. It acted as a reminder that language is an art form, and as such, languaging is an extension and development of the basic capacity of human beings to shape their worlds, and by shaping the worlds, shaping themselves. And it also reminded that how humans treat each other and in the natural world is influenced by our thoughts, concepts, ideas, ideologies, and worldviews. And these, in turn, are shaped through language. So we are talking here about world making, art making, language making as world making. So it also offers tools to visualize and critically reflect on discourses which combine various features together to produce particular representations of reality. And it was all seen in these workshops conducted with primary school children aged 9 to 12, which was absolutely fascinating to be part of. So what this project showed was that arts are a powerful tool for inclusion and agency, and by supporting the creation of complex and inclusive space in which learners learn to become active agents, critically and creatively weaving meaning across languages, modalities, and cultures. So this project was important because, again, coming back to the UNESCO report 2025, multilingual education is not just about language. It is about creating inclusive, equitable learning environments where linguistic and other forms of diversity are celebrated. And this is what happens when you used artworks in a classroom. This is what happens when I used artworks in that particular project, but also the future projects. What projects I will be talking about. These projects are projects that were rooted in my PhD work. So after I completed at the end of my PhD, I was awarded funding to do the doctoral internship with SILT, which is the Scottish government-funded agency supporting development of language teachers in Scotland. And I developed a project called Teaching Polish Through Art in Multilingual Scotland. Again, what this project aimed to do was to support L3 teachers who wanted to teach Polish and wanted to include other languages of the children as part of their teaching Polish as L3. So we ran a series of workshops through Zoom or through Teams. Well, they were online, and teachers participated in the workshop, engaged with the type of activities I have just discussed. And then after 2 workshops that were partly theoretical, partly practical, they developed their own activities at school. So they had a month or two when they work in school, when they adapted the activities to their context. And then we met, we had sort of a workshop surgery when they when they came back, they discussed what they want to do, how they want to do, and we shared the ideas and discussed them all together. And then they did the project in school, and they came back to share what happened with us. After that, we created an exhibition online, which I will share the link to it later, and you will see what kind of work children and teachers did. And there is also a number of feedback slides shared on that page. So you will be able to see what was the response of the teacher, but also of the children. In general, it was very positive, and this meant also that SILT asked whether there would be a possibility of extending the project beyond Polish. So I joined with a colleague with whom I at the time had already worked on other projects about multilingualism and creative methods, Hirsu, and we got funding from the University of Glasgow Knowledge Exchange Fund to run the Multilingualism Through Art project. So the format was very similar. We had 4 workshops online, and then the online exhibition. At the end, there was a knowledge exchange event where teachers had an opportunity to share their work. And again, the feedback we received was very positive. As you can see here, we have testimonials from teachers who said that this project had shifted their thinking towards prioritizing and awareness and celebrating multilingualism, and the children that we had in our class, the teachers saying, and with this appreciation and curiosity, we can weave our L1 and our L2 into our language learning from there. So you can see the teacher refers to different languages children in classes are using. Again, from another school, the Multilingualism Through Art project has provided a pedagogy which is instantly motivating to the children by allowing the children to take the lead on how they respond to the task, providing a variety of media and keeping the task creative with no right or wrong answer. Barriers to engaging with the language activity were immediately broken down. And being part of this project has started the ball rolling on our journey to becoming a school where multilingual languaging is standard practice, and where the many languages of our school and community are represented by staff and pupils. I look forward to rolling this project out to involve more pupils and staff in this exciting way of language learning, one of the teachers said. And indeed, we are moving on with that concept, with that way of working. We're sharing with teachers in Scotland, and but around that time, we also started a workshop, a series of continuing professional development in Vietnam. So there were 2 projects. One that started in 2022 with teachers from 3 provinces in Vietnam. 329 teachers participated. It was the teacher activities group, project, which means that teachers were supported to work together, and there was this cascading model where we worked with facilitators and facilitators who also were teachers, but more senior and experienced teachers, then worked with teachers in their teaching activity groups. So we ran a series of workshops for teachers where we used a similar way of engaging children with language learning through art making. We worked with local artists, and we engaged 14 local artists who created activities for the teachers that were then used in schools. We also engaged with 5 ethnic groups because there is the diversity across Vietnam, and we work with Kin, Cham, Dao, Thai, and Sanju minorities teachers and children. I mean, we work with teachers, but they work with children in their classes. So again, after that project, and I will be very happy to share resources we created as part of it in a moment, we were invited to, we put an application in to develop that approach, and we are currently running the follow-up consolidation project, this time with around 640 teachers in Vietnam. Again, 3 provinces, some new, some the ones we already worked with. It was really interesting because some of the teachers who participated in the first project came back in the second project as facilitators. So you could see that they were involved and they were interested in developing further. This time we work with museums. We work with 3 local museums, and the activities we create together with museums are based on the artifacts in the museums. So, as part of this project, we created a framework, arts-based framework, because what we noticed was that teachers use art in their work in a very specific way. We are currently working on the paper, which we hope will be published soon, in which we introduce the framework. There is a little bit about it in the resource we've already published after the first project, but the article we're working on will discuss it in more depth. And the framework consists of 4 ways of using art. So teachers used art as content. So they presented culture and arts to learn English. The examples of it could be going to the museum, watching the painting, and then discussing the content of the painting in a target language. The art was also used as a tool. So art as a memory aid, when you illustrate the vocabulary items, when you learn a song to learn specific vocabulary. So art as an instrument for learning. The third way is art as method, and in this category we included making art step by steps. So, for example, here you can see an example of the exquisite corpse, where we invited learners to draw the creature and annotate it in different languages. But again, by doing it step by step, following the instructions, children bring their need, they bring what they want to learn, and they also learn how to understand the mechanism of languaging, which again helps them to communicate better. And then the fourth way of using art is art as thinking. So here we are talking about thinking in language, thinking in images, thinking in the context, and moving from memorizing, drilling, and copying and repeating to the process of combining, selecting, transforming meaning, thinking of doing language, culture, and art together, not before or after doing a language, but doing it at the same time whilst making. So in this way of using art in a language classroom, art children or learners are involved at the very personal level. And at the end of my presentation, I'm really happy to share with you the resources. So these are the resources we created after working and when working with teachers in Scotland. And you can download it. On the left-hand side, you can see the screenshots of the videos with an exhibition of the children's work with teacher feedback. On the right-hand side, there is a pack of cards with activities that involve multiple languages of the children and in art making, whilst focusing on the target language that is being taught. And in the next slide, which I'm just hoping to see you now, you can see the resources we created when working with teachers in Vietnam. So on the left-hand side, there is a book, Arts-Based Language Learning in Vietnam. The book itself is in English and in Vietnamese. And you will find in the description of the project and number of activities we created with teachers, with artists, and for teachers and children. On the right-hand side, you can see the card with an activity that is not published yet. We are just finalizing the pack of these activities, and they should be available soon on the project website, which again you can see the QR code to, and you are very welcome to come back in the next few weeks to see the resources we created in collaboration with museums and teachers in Vietnam as part of the current project. And that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me for so long, and I'm happy to answer questions you might have.